Aloha and welcome back. This is Pokala Inui. You are listening to Hawaiian Potpourri. The time now is 35 minutes after the hour of 6 o'clock, and today is the first day of July in the year 2012. We had been talking about an update of what is happening in the international arena, taking a look at Iraq and more updated events occurring there. It looks like the fall of the government is being seen. We don't know if it will actually come about, but there is more dissension occurring in Iraq. With regards to Afghanistan, the Taliban had attended a peace and reconciliation conference in Tokyo, and was it Tokyo or Kyoto, Japan, sponsored. This is the third conference sponsored by the university, and so a Taliban representative accepted it and went to the conference. So he was able to sit face to face with a representative of the Afghan government, and there in that had a brief discussion or face-to-face with the representative of the Afghan government. The Taliban have refused to negotiate with the Afghan government, believing that it is not the Afghan government that controls anything, but it is the U.S. government, and has been insistent that they speak with the U.S. government instead. There are secret meetings going on with the U.S. government, and it has been going on, although the U.S. government has for a long time denied that they were conducting such negotiations, but they are, and now it's coming out that yes, indeed, they are admitting to doing that. Anyway, this may be a break in having the Taliban speaking directly to the present American puppet government in Afghanistan. In the meantime, the Afghanistani government is facing its own internal problems, so the situation remains destabilized both in Iraq and in Afghanistan. In Syria, we see that there has been no agreement by the European and other foreign nations to intervene in Syria. Russia and China keeps holding back the interventionists, so those people who would like to come in and bring about a different political order in Syria. And my analysis previously had been that it is generally those governments, including especially the United States, who has been the instigators of this political disorder, which results in the killing of many of the civilians, as well as killing of the government military in Syria. The situation is at a standstill at the present time. The next thing that occurred, or that has been occurring in the international arena, is what has happened in Egypt. And in Egypt, a new president has been elected. There is very little, if any, continuing controversy over the election process, and this president is from the Muslim Brotherhood. That is the same organization that had been declared illegal for those years that the Egyptian head of state was in power. There's so many names that I sometimes confuse the names themselves, but no, it wasn't Muammar Gaddafi. It was now I've forgotten his name. Anyway, this new Egyptian president comes from an organization that has been, or had been, banned in politics, the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood then turned most of its attention to human services, making sure that people had enough food, making sure that there was electricity, and providing medical care to the people who were without medical care and the rest. Very similar to what is happening in the Palestinian areas where you have Hamas. Was it Hamas? I believe it was Hamas, who turned itself into a social service organization as well as a political advocate. Now, what has happened in Egypt is that as the situation turned, then the Muslim Brotherhood was permitted to run candidates for political office. They joined the political system, and you find that the Muslim Brotherhood now controls, well, I shouldn't put it that way, a person from the Muslim Brotherhood is now the president of Egypt. You will also find that the political representatives in their convening legislature is also heavily controlled by members of the Muslim Brotherhood. So you see the pendulum changing. You also find that the president is now in somewhat of a conflict and a struggle for power with the military. The military, before the elections, had rewritten the Constitution such that it was taking powers for itself before a new president came in and had joined in the writing or the determination of that Constitution. Still, there has been a presidential election, and it appears that the new president will be attempting to correct this error, and there will be a struggle between him and his administration and the military in terms of the sharing or in terms of the return of some of these powers or the shifting of some of these powers to the civilian-controlled government, which is the elected president. So you will find continuing tensions in that particular area, and of course, as the new government begins to stretch its wings and begin to operate a government after a long period of time without the continuing operation of government, there will be challenges by this government. But it seems that the popular will has spoken, and you do have president now elected. He has since resigned from the Muslim Brotherhood in an attempt to be more expansive or more inclusive to many others to come into the government and to participate in the rebuilding of Egypt. So it's a good start. As a result of all of this, the relationship that Egypt had with Israel and the relationship that Egypt had with the United States appears to be strained, appears that there will be a new relationship, and it will be, I expect, more in support of the Palestinians rather than the Israelis. So it seems that things, as they continue to move, and if the United States takes its hands off of this particular area, you are finding that the people's movements is away from the support of the United States and Israel and their involvement in this area, more in support of the Palestinians, more in a movement towards their Islamic religious beliefs. And even within their Islamic religious beliefs, there seems to be still a story of incorporating, making more inclusive the government so that it's not only one part of Islam, but to incorporate different aspects of Islam within the government. And some governments are so inclusive that they have included those of other religions into the government. And what do you find as these things occur? Similar to what had been occurring prior to the American attempt to manipulate these areas. Okay, I am Pokalai Nui. The time now is 44 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock, and I invite your telephone calls should you wish to comment on any of my comments, my evaluations on what is happening in these areas. At 7 o'clock, or just before 7 o'clock, we will go to the news, and so if you want to call now so that you can have enough time to engage in a discussion and I won't have to rush you in your expression expression of your sense of what is happening in the international arena. The telephone number here to call is 524-1080. We'll put you on the radio and see what you have to say about those matters. Another issue that has been a major issue, and that is dealing with what is called genetically modified organisms. Other people will call it grossly manipulated organisms, and sometimes people do say that the manipulation of these organisms are gross indeed. But there are many myths about GMO, and what I did was download an article, not an article, it seems like it is probably going to turn into a book. It's over 200 pages, was that it? I don't know. It's about an inch thick. Oftentimes that's how I measure the size of these printed pages that I have. It's called GMO Myths and Truths, an evidence-based examination of the claims made for the safety and efficacy of genetically modified crops. And it was published in June 2012 by Earth Open Source. And if you have a computer, just look for GMO Myths and Truths, and you'll be able to download this this work yourself. I'm going to read just one portion of it, and that deals with the first myth, that is that genetic engineering is just an extension of natural breeding. The truth is that genetic engineering is different from natural breeding and poses special risk. Why is that? Well, here is the explanation. GMO proponents claim that genetic engineering is just an extension of natural plant breeding. They say that GMO crops are no different from naturally bred crops apart from the inserted foreign GM. That's the GM gene, or what is sometimes called the trans gene, and its protein product. But this is misleading. GM is completely different from natural breeding and poses different risk. Natural breeding can only take place between closely related forms of life. Example, cats with cats, and not cats with dogs. Wheat with wheat, not wheat with tomatoes or fish. In this way, the genes that carry information for all parts of the organism are passed down to the generations in an orderly way. In contrast, GM is a laboratory-based technique that is completely different from natural breeding. The main stage of the genetic modification processes are, and I'm going to list 6 main stages. Please bear with me. In a process known as tissue cultural cell culture, tissue from the plant that is to be genetically modified is placed in culture. Number 2, millions of the tissue cultured plant cells are subjected to the GM gene insertion process. This results in the GM gene being inserted into the DNA of a few of the plant cells in tissue culture. The inserted DNA is intended to reprogram the cell's genetic blueprint, conferring completely new properties on the cell. This process would never happen in nature. It is carried out either by using a device known as a gene gun, which shoots the GM gene into the plant cells, or by linking the GM gene to a special piece of DNA present in the soil bacterium. It's called Agrobacterium tumefacium. When the A. tumefaciums infect a plant, the GM gene is carried into the cells and can insert into the plant cell's DNA. Number 3, At this point in the process, the genetic engineers have a tissue culture consisting of hundreds of thousands to millions of plant cells. Some have picked up the GM gene while others have not. The next step is to treat the culture with chemicals to eliminate all except those cells that have successfully incorporated the GM gene into their own DNA. Finally, the few cells that survive, this is number 4, that survives the chemical treatment are treated with plant hormones. The hormones stimulate these genetically modified plant cells to proliferate and differentiate into small GM plants that can be transferred to soil and grown on. Number 5, once the GM plants are growing, the genetic engineer examines them and eliminates any that do not seem to be growing well. He or she then does tests on the remaining plants to identify one or more that express the GM genes at high levels. These are selected as candidates for commercialization. And number 6, the resulting population of GM plants all carry and express the GM genes of interest, but they have not been assessed for health and environmental safety or nutritional value. This part of the process will be discussed later. The fact that the GM transformation process is artificial does not automatically make it undesirable or dangerous. It is the consequences of the procedure that give cause for concern. Okay, so now you see that GM gene modification is not merely an extension of natural breeding, but it is done in a non-natural way. I had thought for a long time and was not all that, what is the word for it, condemning of GMO. And that was because it seemed to me that, let's take taro as an example, the Hawaiians were excellent agriculturalists, and with taro they were able to mix the gene through natural, what is the word for it, cross-fertilization of the taro, and they came out with many different breeds. So I had seen that as essentially an earlier stage of GM. But now understanding that genetic modification of these genes are quite different from the natural environment where my Hawaiian ancestors would deal with the kalo or would deal with other plants. It gives me some room for reconsideration of my earlier conclusions. If you would like to comment on this matter, our telephone number is 524-1080, and we'll put you on the radio and see what you have to say about this discussion. All right, let's go to our telephone line. We have a first caller. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Puka. Yeah.
Good morning.
Kind of faintly can hear you.
Oh, I see.
But you know, the questions about this GMO. Do they? Well, it sounds like they injected in these GMOs in every plant.
Well, they say
what
they do is they take cultures of the plant that they want to affect or infect, and then they grow it in a, I guess it's a petri dish or some kind of a more modern culture, and then they implant the genes from something else into that dish or directly into the cellular structure of these cuttings that they had made, and then they start growing out the plant.
Oh, I see. And I understand that Monsanto is doing it, yeah?
Oh yeah, Monsanto is one of the leading organizations, yes.
So who funds Monsanto? The federal government?
I don't know. I think Monsanto carries on its own research. I think they are also contracted with various groups, or because it is involved in the sale of the product as an end result, then it has a research division that does this, and they get their money back from the sale of various products, and by the fact that they can monopolize certain strains of this new product, and they can sue others if that strain should happen to get blown into, let's say, a cornfield, and so the person raising their corn is now affected by the GMO crossbreeding, and they can sue the corn owner or the ones who's raising this crop for violating their patent. So Monsanto is a very, very large corporation. They may also be using universities to help in conducting some of their research, and that's part of the argument about socialized practice for major corporations who use universities to do their research and development, and then take it and produce it commercially. So, I suspect that Monsanto is using many different techniques for supporting its research.
So farmers do allow them to do it, yeah? To do this
I'm sorry, who allows them to do it?
The farmers?
Well, what they may do is they may come in and they may lease a lot of lands in a particular area. Like in Hawaii, it is said that Kamehameha School's lands, to a large extent, or a lot of lands that is owned by Kamehameha Schools, especially some in the Wahiawa area, are being leased by Monsanto. So they are using that to practice the growing of crops that has been GMO altered, to test the effects. One of the problems I have heard is that they are being so heavily criticized and now being sued because their plants, the pollens that get carried by the winds are affecting many different crops or other people's crops. And then when Monsanto moves in and tries to sue, these other folks are saying, why are you permitting your pollen to come over into our area? Monsanto is saying, well, we have no control over it. It's the winds. But you shouldn't be propagating our patented plants. Some people are saying your patented plants are causing illness among our people, and there are a number of suits being brought by Monsanto. Therefore, Monsanto is trying to find an isolated area where they can propagate their planting, and so at least that's part of the argument. So a lot of so Monsanto is coming to Hawaii and using Hawaii as a primary base for producing these GMOs, which means that many of our local growers will be affected, but it is sort of to buffer between the U.S. mainland and other areas in the Pacific because of the isolation of Hawaii.
So you know what part of the island they I guess doing this?
Yeah, in the Haleiwa side, I believe was where it's at. There's a video on that particular subject, and I'm sorry I don't have the name of the video, although I'm in that video. But if you hunted for it in the internet, I'm sure you would be able to find it.
Yeah, I looked through the internet, but still don't understand the. I guess it's a lot of things that how this all systemize out. But I cannot hear you through the telephone. I got to turn on my radio.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Anyway, okay. I'll let you go.
Okay. Thank you very much for calling. Aloha. And with that, we're going to music.
Kaulana na pua o Hawaii Pupa a mahope o ka aina Iki mai ka elele o ka loko ino Pala pala anunu me ka paka Mane mai Hawaii moku o ke ave Koku ana honoa o Pilani Ka ko'o mai kaua I o mano Pa'aku me ke one o ka kuhi hewa Aolea e kau I ka pulima Maluna o ka pepa o ka enemi Po o hui ai nā ku ai hewa I ka pono sivila a o ke kanaka Aole makoa e mina I ka pu'u kala o ke au puni Ua lava mai